What if I told you that all of this had already been foretold centuries ago? What if the death of a pope wasn't just the end of a cycle, but the final warning before collapse, the exact point where history ends and chaos begins? What you're about to hear is not just an ancient prophecy forgotten by many, ignored by others, but one that may have just come true. Nostradamus spoke, Saint Malachy warned, and now, in 2025, the world seems to be following exactly the script they left behind. If you're starting to feel like something strange is coming, go ahead and like this video, because what comes next might just turn your worldview upside down. The prophecy of Nostradamus. Michel de Nostradamus, a Frenchman born in 1503 and who died in 1566, is the man who still haunts us today with his predictions. Astrologer, physician, seer in 1555, he published a book called Les Prophecies, filled with poetic quatrains said to predict the future. And now, in 2025, with the death of Pope Francis, one of those quatrains is under intense scrutiny. It speaks of a very old pontiff who dies, followed by a Roman of good age who will weaken the seat. Francis, who died at 88, fits the very old description perfectly. In Nostradamus's time, living past 50 was already nearly a miracle. So imagining a religious leader reaching 88, that was otherworldly. The quatrain found in the 1555 book says, when the great pontiff changes his place, an old man will be swept away by the current. The current could be a metaphor for death. The change of place could refer to a shift in power at the Vatican. Coincidence? Maybe. But when you connect that to what's happening now, it gets serious. Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in 1936 in Argentina, was elected pope in 2013 at the age of 76. He led the church for 12 years, a period marked by both major reforms and heavy controversies. In 2025, the Daily Mail published an article linking his death to Nostradamus's prophecy, suggesting the weakening of the seat refers to internal division during Francis's papacy. The Vatican, under his leadership, faced financial scandals, sexual abuse allegations, and heated debates about celibacy and the role of women. Did Nostradamus foresee these fractures? Or was he referring to the next pope, someone who will face even more intense challenges? That mystery is what keeps us glued to this story, as if we've stumbled upon a secret few truly understand. Nostradamus's quatrains aren't instruction manuals with dates and names. He wrote in verses full of symbols, metaphors, and enigmas, almost as if he wanted us to struggle to decode them. That makes interpretation hard, but also what makes it so fascinating. Take the quatrain about the very old pontiff. It doesn't explicitly say Pope Francis, but the details fit in a way that sends chills. In the Renaissance, when Nostradamus lived, the Catholic Church was central, but also being shaken by the Protestant Reformation. He used the stars to make predictions, mixing astrology with mysticism, and wrote in Old French with touches of Latin and Provençal to obscure or open his visions to multiple interpretations. He even used anagrams and wordplay. That's why, nearly 5 centuries later, we're still trying to understand what he meant. Let's break it down. The quatrain speaks of a man of good age who follows the very old pontiff and weakens the seat. Here, interpretations differ. Some believe the Roman is Francis himself. After all, as pope, he was the bishop of Rome, despite being Argentine. His papacy, full of reforms that upset traditionalists, might be seen as that weakening. Others believe the prophecy points to the next pope, someone with Italian roots or Roman ties, who will lead during an even deeper crisis. And in 2025, the world is polarized. Geopolitical tensions, climate change, and the rise of artificial intelligence are raising ethical questions. The Church, once the heart of Europe, is struggling to maintain influence. A new pope facing all this could truly shake the foundations of the Vatican, and with the conclave approaching, the tension is sky-high. Who will this Roman be, and what will he bring? Another striking detail: Nostradamus mentions a young man of dark skin in a separate quatrain, possibly tied to the Church's future. The term is symbolic, but many are already linking it to names like Peter Turkson from Gone Aged 76, known for advocating social justice and environmental issues. Luis Antonio Tagle from the Philippines, aged 67, charismatic and beloved by the masses. The election of an African or Asian pope would be historic, marking a break from centuries of European leadership. With the exception of Francis, could Nostradamus have seen that change? The term Black Pope also appears in other prophecies, like Saint Malachy's, and might refer to ethnicity. The Jesuit order, often called the Black Popes due to their influence, or to a dark era looming over the Vatican. Now, let's talk about one chilling detail. Nostradamus mentions fire and blood in the city of 7 hills, a clear reference to Rome. This may not mean literal destruction, like an attack, but rather a metaphor for internal crisis, loss of power, or deep divisions within the Church. In 2025, the Vatican is under pressure. Europe is losing its faith. Christianity is shrinking, and debates rage over modernization and competition with other religions in an increasingly secular world. Francis tried to be a bridge, but was criticized from all sides. Conservatives accused him of surrendering to modern values, while progressives wanted even more radical changes. That tension, combined with his death, makes the prophecy feel frighteningly real, as if we're watching the script unfold in real time. The context of Francis's death only adds to the atmosphere. A month before, he was discharged from Gemelli Hospital, where he was being treated for pneumonia. On Easter, days before passing, he appeared in St. Peter's Square, visibly frail, waving from the Popemobile. Many said he looked like he was saying goodbye, with a gaze that mixed peace with the weight of something greater. Some saw only an old man nearing the end. Others saw a prophetic sign, as if he knew his time was up and something larger was coming. And there's more. Francis asked to be buried outside the Vatican, in the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, breaking a centuries-old tradition. A simple gesture, but with massive symbolism, almost as if he wanted to mark the end of an era, stepping away from the heart of Roman power. Saint Malachy was an Irish archbishop who lived between 1094 and 1148. Legend says that in 1139 he traveled to Rome, and upon touching the gates of the city, fell into a trance. In this supernatural vision, he received a list of 112 Latin mottos, each describing a future pope, starting with Celestine II in 1143 and ending with the last one, where things get serious. The prophecy says, "In the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, there shall reign Peter the Roman, who shall feed his flock among many tribulations. After that, the city of 7 hills will be destroyed, and the dreadful judge will judge the people. The end. That's it, nothing more. Just the word, the end. Francis, elected in 2013 after Benedict XVI's resignation, is the 112th pope on the list. But he is not named Peter, nor was he born in Rome. So how does he fit in? Here's where the story becomes intriguing. Like a puzzle where the pieces almost fit. Let's break it down. First, the question of Peter the Roman. Francis chose his name in honor of Saint Francis of Assisi, whose birth name was Giovanni di Pietro, Bernard literally, son of Peter. As Bishop of Rome, Francis also symbolically represents the city of the 7 hills, the heart of the Catholic Church. These symbolic details have already made many raise their eyebrows. Additionally, Francis was a pope of ruptures, the first Latin American pope, the first Jesuit, the first non-European in over 1,200 years. His election on March 13th came at a moment of crisis, right after Benedict XVI did something no one expected: resign. The first papal resignation in 600 years. To many, this was already a sign that something unusual was happening now. With Francis' death at age 88 on April 21st, 2025, Malachy's prophecy has returned to center stage like an exclusive secret that only a few can see. But there's a crucial detail. Saint Malachy's prophecy isn't as straightforward as it seems. It was only published in 1595, more than 400 years after Malachy's death by a Benedictine monk named Arnold Yn. In the book Lignum Vitae, this raises suspicions. Why was it hidden for so long? Some scholars believe the list was forged in the 16th century to influence papal elections, especially since the mottos up to 1590 are incredibly accurate, matching names, symbols, and details with eerie precision. After that, the descriptions become vaguer, almost poetic. For example, the motto "Flower of Flowers" was linked to Paul VI, whose coat of arms had 3 fleur-de-lis. From the half moon was tied to John Paul I, elected during a new moon. From the laborer of the sun matched John Paul II, born on a solar eclipse. Are these coincidences, forced connections, or is there something more? When we reach Francis, the last on the list, things get chillingly real. His papacy was marked by tribulations, just as the prophecy says. During his 12 years as Pope, the world endured intense crises, wars in the Middle East, the 2020 pandemic that stopped the world, climate catastrophes like floods and wildfires, and scandals within the Vatican, from financial corruption to abuse. Allegations. Francis tried to be a bridge bringing the church closer to the poor, migrants, and the marginalized. He spoke about the environment, forgiveness, and fighting abuse within the clergy. But this drew resistance. Conservatives accused him of watering down the faith. Progressives demanded even more radical changes. This divided climate, combined with his death, makes the prophecy seem terrifyingly real. The phrase, "He shall feed his flock among many tribulations," seems to describe Francis' papacy with chilling precision. Did Malachy truly foresee all this? Another detail adding to the mystery is Benedict XVI's resignation in 2013. Until then, the papacy was a lifelong position with rare exceptions. When Benedict stepped down, it raised a troubling question: who is the real pope? Francis was legitimately elected, but some conservative groups never fully accepted his leadership. Even calling him a false prophet. Now, with Francis' death, we have 2 consecutive popes who did not serve until natural death, something unprecedented in modern history. For believers in the prophecy, this is yet another sign that we are at the end of a cycle that began with Peter the Apostle and now ends with a symbolic Peter. And there's more. Francis requested to be buried outside the Vatican in the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, breaking a centuries-old tradition. It's as if, even in death, he wanted to mark the end of an era, stepping away from the heart of Roman power. In 2025, with Francis passing, the prophecy has resurfaced in full force, appearing in TV debates, articles in The Guardian, and viral posts on X, formerly Twitter. Why? Because it touches on an ancestral fear that the end is closer than we think. This feeling of anticipation is what grips us, like we're uncovering something that only a few can truly perceive. But what does the destruction of the city of 7 hills really mean? The prophecy ends with Rome being destroyed and the dreadful judge judging the people. This doesn't have to be a literal event like a physical attack. It might symbolize the Vatican's loss of influence, which is facing massive challenges in 2025, secularization in Europe, where churches are becoming museums, the rise of the knowns, no religion in the US, declining church attendance among youth in Brazil. The church, once the center of power, now struggles to maintain its voice in a world dominated by technology, polarization, and new spiritualities. Francis tried to modernize it but ended up deepening divisions. So, did Malachy foresee this decline? Or is the destruction still to come? Schism, a global event that will shake everything. The symbolism of the prophecy is also powerful. The idea that the church begins with Peter the Apostle and ends with Peter the Roman creates a circular narrative, like history is closing in on itself. Peter's Basilica in Rome was built over the spot where tradition says Peter was crucified. Upside down, his tomb lies beneath the main altar, as if the first pope still holds up the church. Saint Malachy's prophecy isn't just about the end. It describes a final period of persecution during Francis' papacy. The church faced criticism from all sides. Authoritarian governments like China restricted religious freedom. Anti-religious movements gained strength on social media. Conservative cardinals like Raymond Burke openly criticized Francis' reforms. This pressure, combined with global crises like the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, and climate disasters, creates the perfect scenario for the tribulations described in the prophecy. It's as if Malachy drew a map of exactly what we're living now, and Francis' death is the final marker. Apocalyptic prophecies, one of the most haunting passages in the Book of Revelation, appears in chapter 17. It speaks of Babylon, a city clothed in purple and scarlet, who has prostituted herself with the kings of the earth. Many scholars interpret this as ancient Rome, the city of 7 hills, the epicenter of the empire in John's time. But others see something more. A prophetic metaphor for the Vatican itself. Saint Malachy's prophecy ends with the destruction of this city. Nostradamus, too, speaks of fire and blood in the same place. And now, in 2025, the Catholic Church finds itself in crisis. In Europe, churches are being turned into cafes. In Brazil, youth trade Sunday Mass for live streams on X, and in the United States, nearly 30% of the population identifies as having no religion, according according to the Pew Research Center, once the beating heart of global power. The Vatican is struggling to make itself heard in a divided digital world. Could this be the fall of Babylon, the fading of spiritual authority? Or is something far more literal, something darker on the horizon? Then there's the beast of Revelation, chapter 13. For centuries, it's been linked to figures like Nero, Napoleon, even Hitler. But in 2025, some are pointing fingers elsewhere too. Global institutions, tech giants, artificial intelligence. In his final years, Pope Francis issued warnings. In a 2023 conference in Rome, he said, "Without ethics, technology can enslave the soul." A 2025 UN report revealed that over 70% of content decisions on social media are shaped by algorithms guiding what we see, think, and believe. So, what if the beast is not a person at all? What if it's a system one that silently controls our choices, or worse? What if the beast is already inside the church? Some radical groups suggest that a betrayal has taken root deep within its core. The so-called anti-pope theory surged after Benedict XVI resigned in 2013, with some calling Francis a false prophet. The Guardian reported in 2025 that divisions within the Vatican hadn't been this deep since the Protestant Reformation. Revelation chapter 12 speaks of a woman clothed with the sun, a crown of 12 stars on her head. She gives birth to a child, then flees from a dragon. For many, this woman is the church giving birth to a new era. Under siege, then come the two witnesses of chapter 11. They prophesy for 1,260 days, are killed, and then rise again. Some say they represent justice and faith rejected by the world, but others believe they are real people. Pope Francis, with his message of mercy, and Benedict XVI, guardian of tradition, have both been named by apocalyptic thinkers as those very witnesses. Francis's death shortly after a frail appearance during Easter adds fuel to this theory, as if he had fulfilled his mission before the dragon could strike. It's this connection that draws us in, like we've stumbled upon a forgotten key to a secret buried for centuries. And then Fatima in 1917. 3 Portuguese children, Lucia, Jacinta, and Francisco, claimed to have seen the Virgin Mary. She revealed 3 secrets. The first 2 visions of hell and World War II were released in the 1940s, but the third remained locked away until the year 2000. The Vatican finally unveiled it. A bishop dressed in white, walking through a ruined city, murdered by soldiers. They linked it to the 1981 assassination attempt on John Paul II. But Lucia, who lived until 2005, hinted that what was revealed wasn't the full truth. And now, in 2025, with the death of Francis, that secret has resurfaced. Francis often wore whites, sometimes even without the papal sash, and his papacy was marred by crises, as if walking through a spiritual city in ruins. A viral post on X asked, "What if the bishop in white was Francis, spiritually killed by the church's own divisions?" A question that has sparked a global wave of fascination and dread. But the trail doesn't end there. The Book of Enoch, an ancient text banned from the Bible, speaks of a cosmic war between fallen angels called the Watchers and those who remained loyal to heaven. It warns of a time when powers of earth and powers of heaven would intertwine, corrupting humanity from within. In 2025, that idea hits disturbingly close. AI is creating digital cults. Religious leaders are aligning with authoritarian governments. In China, the church answers to the Communist Party, and a study from Oxford shows 20% of young Americans follow AI-generated spiritual gurus. Could the watchers be real? Are they algorithms, influencers, systems pretending to be divine? Among the Dead Sea Scrolls discovered between 1947 and 1956, there's talk of a final war, sons of light versus sons of darkness, and a temple corrupted from within. Sound familiar? The Vatican, rocked by financial scandals and internal battles, fits that prophecy too well. In 2021, cardinals were implicated in a money laundering scheme, and then came the ultimate symbol. Pope Benedict XVI resigns. Pope Francis dies. But not just that, he requests not to be buried in the Vatican. Instead, the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, breaking centuries of tradition. Corriere della Sera called it a farewell that marks the end of an era. For believers in prophecy, it feels like the church built on the tomb of Peter's, saying goodbye to its own legacy. And now, all eyes turn to the next conclave, because if the prophecies are right, this might be the final act in a 2,000-year-old drama. But it wasn't just his death that made the world stop. It was the context, a planet that seems to be at its limit. In recent years, we've witnessed wars erupting, technology spinning out of control, and traditional faith losing its grip. Events that could have been just headlines suddenly seem to align with the tribulations described by Malachy and the global crisis foretold by Nostradamus. It's as if reality is following an ancient script, and the death of Francis is the chapter that ties it all together. Let's break it down to understand how what's happening now could be the very sign so many have been waiting for. First, the wars. The Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24 says, "You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Do not be alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come." In 2025, this verse feels like it was written for today. The Middle East is in flames, with conflict stretching from Gaza to Yemen. The war in Ukraine, which began in 2022, drags on with no resolutions, cities destroyed, millions displaced. In the Red Sea, tensions between naval powers escalate, and North Korea continues its missile tests. Throughout his papacy, Francis tirelessly called for dialogue and peace. In 2023, he even traveled to conflict zones like South Sudan to mediate peace deals. But despite the power of his words, too often they were drowned out by bombs and hate-filled rhetoric. The New York Times reported in 2025 that the world is now closer to a global conflict than at any point since the Cold War. So, are these wars and rumors of wars the tribulations the prophecies warned us about? And now, the papal throne stands empty. A new conclave is coming. Names like Peter Turkson from Ghana and Luis Antonio Tagle from the Philippines are being considered. An African or Asian pope would be a turning point, as if the church were being reborn. But who will he be? The new shepherd of Nostradamus bringing light, or the false prophet some fear is coming? In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus says, "When you see these things happening, lift up your heads, for your redemption is near." Prophecies were never meant to predict the exact day the world ends, but to wake us up to the present. The death of Francis on April 21st, 2025 is a moment to reflect. What are we doing with the time we have? Are we at the end, or standing at the beginning of something new? This story, filled with mystery and prophecy leaves us with more questions than answers. But maybe that's what keeps us alive, the search for meaning in a world that refuses to stop surprising us. If this content was meaningful to you, I strongly recommend you watch the video now appearing on your screen. In it, I reveal the other side of Christ's death, the part the movies and soap operas never show. I'll see you in the next video.